facility in order to accommodate the transfer of equipment and increased mail or the carrying costs of maintaining vacant space in Oshkosh for an undetermined period of time been included in the proposed savings? Have you fully considered the cost of transporting mail from Milwaukee past Oshkosh to Green Bay just to have it brought back to Oshkosh after it's been sorted? In addition, this consolidation would, as has already been pointed out by one of the other people who appeared, would have significant effects on businesses in the 549 area, and this fact should not be overlooked by the Postal Service. I've been contacted by local commercial mail users whose increased annual costs range from $1,800 for a small nonprofit organization to $40,000 a year for an area newspaper. And we all have to be concerned about an increase in the cost of doing business in the Fox Valley, including that of the Postal Service. This is all important information that should have been provided prior to this meeting, and by withholding it, you fail to convince the public that this study is completely based on merit. As my time is limited, I'd like to submit the questions I've mentioned and a number of additional questions in writing, and I look forward to a written reply to each. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
My name is Carol Lemke, and I am a 27-plus-year employee of the Oshkosh Post Office. I understand the idea of moving people and machines to an area so that it's all going to be utilized. Oshkosh went through an AMP study a year or so ago about moving the outgoing mail up to Green Bay. Green Bay was under a study to see about moving the outgoing mail to Oshkosh, which study was abruptly halted when this one was announced. I know that on the afternoon shift, the outgoing mail, a lot of the machines aren't being utilized in Oshkosh, and I would assume they're not being utilized in Green Bay. However, I work the 11 to 7 shift. When I come in at 11 o'clock, all 9 of the letter machines and the parcel sorting machine and the flat sorting machine are all processing mail at 11 o'clock at night. By 5 o'clock in the morning, when we dispatch the mail that goes out to the other 549 cities, those machines have been running all night long, and they continue to run after 5 o'clock to process the mail for Appleton, Neenah Menasha, Fond du Lac, and Oshkosh. How can you say that you're going to be able to process all the mail from this area, all the mail from the Green Bay area, with fewer machines and fewer people, when we can barely get it out in time now?
It's not all of Oshkosh's automated pieces of equipment on Tour 1 are used to process the DPS. And yet, some of the DBCSs have to move to Green Bay to accommodate the zip code 549 DPS volume. And people from the Oshkosh plant will move to Green Bay to process that volume. So I guess I'm not understanding.
How do you mean that not all the machines are used to process DPS mail?
They're not.
The only machine that does not process DPS mail is the diodes.
There's another one too that doesn't process DPS volume.
Oh, really? Which one?
I don't know.
Because I know all 8 of the machines all 8 of the DBCS machines are processing DPS mail when I come in at 11 o'clock and still processing that.
I would also like to say that if you look at the volume in the trays that you're dispatching, a lot of them are not full trays. And when you have to sleeve the trays and you have only a half of the tray, if we consolidate up into the other plant, then we'll certainly be able to have full trays and utilize our equipment better.
How can you say that, though? I mean, if we only have half a tray of mail for Pine River, just because we're going to process the mail 55 miles away doesn't mean we're going to get another half a tray of mail for Pine River.
There will be mail that is processed that comes out of Green Bay that goes to Pine River, and we'd only have one tray.
It comes to Oshkosh first, and we process it in Oshkosh, and then dispatch it to Pine River. Right now. But there's not going to be more mail for Pine River.
Well, to go back to your initial question, the study says we need additional machines in Green Bay. We need X number of machines, and that's supposed to handle the volume that we need to process from the 549 zip codes and GPS.
And what if it doesn't?
We haven't gotten that far yet. This is a proposal. This is a proposal. This is a proposal. I mean, this is a proposal, and this is where you're supposed to bring this up. So.
Mark Harris, Winnebago County Executive. One of the things I have difficulty understanding is how you could reduce transportation costs by combining mail districts. It seems that when you combine mail districts and process the mail in a centralized location, you're clearly going to increase the amount of transportation costs because now you're moving mail further away, in case you're proposing from the Oshkosh Post Office, taking it to Green Bay and bringing it back. I can't imagine how that would save transportation costs. But even if I accepted everything that you presented here today as being accurate, I'm certainly sympathetic with the fact that the post office has to save money. But even accepting everything, the case for moving everything to Green Bay instead of consolidating everything in Oshkosh is extremely thin. And for us to accept this process, we would have to see some comparison of the advantages and disadvantages between those two choices. And right now you only offer one factor, the more centralized location of the Green Bay location, while we know that there are several other factors, including the availability of sufficient space in Oshkosh when there's not sufficient space in Green Bay. So for us to feel that this has been a fair process, we're going to have to see more information and a more head-to-head presentation of the advantages and disadvantages between those two choices. Thank you.
Sarah Sticker, Coordinator of Interlibrary Loan Services at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. I fear that this move will adversely affect the job that I'm trying to do to serve my customers at the university here for getting them materials that they need for scholarship. I also send out a lot of mail to libraries all over the world, and if I'm afraid that if you move this facility up there, it's going to reduce the loan periods that I extend right now for library materials to my patrons. It's going to reduce the loan period time by like 2 days or whatever, which it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but really it's a lot of time when you're trying to work on getting a paper done or whatever. So I'd say thank you.
I'm State Representative Gordon Hintz. I represent the Oshkosh area in the legislature. I want to echo a lot of the comments. I was at the meeting that Congressman Petra put together, and I also want to mention my colleague Dean Cofford is here, representative from MENA, and I know Dick Spanbauer has been out there concerned as well. I guess the hard part for me in all of this is, when you guys showed the video, and as if one person in here didn't already get it. We're short on money, we've had declining mail, don't worry, we're still going to save your Oshkosh postmark. There's not a person in here who doesn't understand that. But the reality is, we've all been asking for details from the day this was started. When I was at that meeting 3 months ago at the chamber, we asked, what are you going to be measuring? What other cost things are on the table? What are the targets for our region, for our state, for our area? and we couldn't get any answers. And of course, as somebody who works in state government, if anybody wants to read my emails, to go through my files, just about every part of my life is public, and that's part of what we do. So, when I see that US in front of the PS, I sort of assume that we're going to have the same sort of transparency and accountability, and yet we couldn't even get you guys to answer what it was you were measuring in the first place. And you wonder why, when you come to explain it to us, you have this cloud of doubt. It's not just about, yeah, we're concerned one job lost right now is too many, but we're not just concerned about our postmark. It's not that we don't understand that some changes have to be made, but the generic, it just makes sense to consolidate when, you know, people are walking up here asking you questions that are pretty significant, like how much is it going to cost to lease additional space? What are the additional transportation costs? If you make a decision like this, it's got to be grounded in some sort of actual savings and reality. Otherwise, we're all going to feel like we've just been screwed. And that's the feeling. I suggest you answer the questions that have been asked, and then you come back and do a town hall meeting, and you do what Mark Harris said. You put together Green Bay, Oshkosh, what about the rest of the state? What about early retirements? What about some of the other things that are on the table? What about asking your workers ways to save money? You know, this, all along, from the beginning, we haven't had answers, and I think that's the tension you're feeling in the room. It's not just people worried about their job or their community. It's the fact that all of this seems to be grounded in very vague details, and no one can get any answers, including people like Congressman Petrod. If you want to do it, you're not going to have a person that doesn't understand that we got money that we need to save, that things need to change. But don't just roll out the dog and pony show. You know, give us
I understand your request, and I also am aware that you all have requested a Freedom of Information Act up to the headquarters level, and that they are preparing that response for you, and you will have that back in time to submit any additional comments that you would like to before the closing date.
I got to follow that, huh? Couldn't say it better than myself, Gordon. Great job. I'm John Casper with the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. I got one fan. I'm here representing the Chamber and our over 1,000 members. I'm also a resident of Oshkosh and a bulk customer of the U.S. Post Office. We got a lot of concerns, and a lot of it really gets down to the fact that there's a lot of lack of information on this whole process. Going back to our first meeting that we had with Steve and the rest of your staff back in August, we asked, I thought, some good questions, and to date still have not gotten any